And I think that now in today's society with just, this quote unquote information age, well, I mean, it really is an information age. You're dealing with a lot of suppression of ideas. Um, and I think personally, the crazy cat lady in the corners yelling gibberish should be allowed to do that. And I should be able to listen to her and then come up to my conclusion of whether or not listening to her is worth my time. And if it's not, then I'll stop listening or I'll go over there. But if you say that I can't, like if there's an overarching power, there's a consensus that I'm not allowed to listen to her, I'm going to want to listen to her. It's like, it's like Mufasa telling Simba, "Hey, you can't go over there to the graveyard. It's dangerous."
Hmm.
And he wants to go. I mean, of course
Yeah.
it's dangerous, but he wants to go nonetheless because he can't go there. Somebody told him he can't go there. It's
Hmm.
like I guess what's that bias when it comes to like that consumer bias? It's like when something is out or when there's a limited supply, you're just naturally gravitated towards
Hmm.
it more because there's a little a limit there. There's like a
Hmm.
barrier for entry. Um, and so it's hard when you get to certain things like the idea like communism because it's like you can't eradicate an ideology. You can't eradicate an idea. It's like when not to get too geopolitical, but when the idea is to eliminate like Hamas, or the idea is to eliminate like a certain group of people based on their connected ideology, you can't do it because it's like they're not all wearing a uniform that connects them to an idea. That's why the McCarthy era was just so, I mean, just crazy because it was like your uncle could be a communist, or your son could be a communist, and it's like how do we just like is there a way to just come to the natural conclusion that communism is just not the way to go? I mean, you can look through history, then that would mean that the society has to be well versed in history. And then it also needs, what else needs to happen is that those with communistic ideas shouldn't be allowed to suppress those that do not. Like there shouldn't be a monopoly on the idea, like in educational institutions, that communism is the way to go, and you have to have this, and capitalism sucks, or any other form of government sucks. But that's what's happening, and so then it's like, okay, can you be tolerant to the idea that maybe certain people can be communists, and that's okay, and I need to be tolerant of that, but then there should be maybe a level of intolerance if they try to suppress my ideas, and so that's
Yeah.
that balance comes in, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the theory, right? That's how it's supposed to work in America. And obviously, like with McCarthyism, we overstepped and like because we were saying, oh, the communists shouldn't repress us. Like, well, you shouldn't repress us too. It's like, yeah, exactly. We should not repress
Right,
each other.
exactly.
But then actually practicing that is the problem. And then people wanting to get back at each other and whatnot. But so so in theory, the principle is we want tolerance, we want freedom of speech, but it turns out that it's pretty complicated because there are certain things that you have to do in order to create an environment where tolerance exists. So, for example, like allowing people to speak about ideas and to argue for them is one thing. Allowing communists to conduct a 30-year subversive takeover of all the education institutions is not something that we should tolerate. And
Right.
that doesn't, I'm not saying that means we need necessarily like a government intervention to undo that or cleanse that, but it is something that by tolerate it was not like we tolerated, like part of the reason we just didn't know it was happening, we weren't paying attention. Another reason is there was a bunch of conservative people who were in academia and they were just like, man, these people are really annoying and they don't listen and I'm done with all this. It's like the more far left people got in, the more right people were just like,
Right.
this is not comfortable. It's not going my way, so I'm going to go somewhere else. And they ceded the territory. So so there's all these different levels. And so I think part of what I'm trying to get at in this chapter is like, yes, we can talk about some general principles that are nice and helpful, but I don't think that there's a way to describe a functional, workable principle. It's so messy that once you just get down into the details, you can't describe what to do. It's like the value and virtue of tolerance is up here, but then implementing it, there's a disconnect where we can't see, there's not stable rules for that. And it might help in that sense to get into just some examples like we have been. When I was I came across Richard Wolff. Maybe I think he's Dr. Richard Wolff. He's like a outspoken communist guy. And I listened to some of his stuff. And I think the first full one I listened to was on Lex Friedman. And he gave this whole background on like why he ended up being a communist. And it was because um, he was coming of age in that sort of McCarthy era or the hangover from that era. And it was like people didn't were scared of talking about communism. And so he was incentivized by like, oh, this is the thing that people don't want to talk about. This is the thing that has the secret goods that is being repressed. And so it was like the cool rebellious thing to do to go, and it added that extra attraction to it. Um, and I mean, I think he's kind of full of it, and I think it's not really an excuse of like, oh, I had this attraction in my youth and that got me there, and now like there's not really an excuse to be there, whatever, 40 years later. But that's what happened, at least by his account. And I think if we take that seriously, like part of tolerance is it's like having I mean, it's the free market of ideas of when you don't repress an idea, you don't give it this extra secret value of like,
Mhm.
here's the hidden place to go if you're on the outside, like we're the cool outsiders.
Yeah.
So by repressing it, you secretly like up its value. Whereas if you just were trying to evaluate as truthfully as you could and without playing games about it, and not using unfair practices, then uh, you might find a lot less people were as naturally attracted to it.